Training camp is winding down for the 49ers, and in anticipation of Saturday's exhibition game here at Levi's Stadium against the Denver Broncos, they held a joint practice today with the Broncos, as they will tomorrow. And let's get to the three things that we saw today out on the practice field. They shared the two practice fields and went at each other. So number one, in joint practices like this, you expect some kind of a scrum or fights to break out. And for the most part, it was very civilized. Last year in Denver, the Broncos did a good job bullying the Niners. This year, the Niners, the only big hit in the scrum happened when rookie safety Adrian Colbert came across the middle, hit a defenseless receiver up high, almost near his head. A couple guys got in a scrum, pushed each other around, but there was no all-out fight or brawl. But John Lynch talked about it in the press conference afterwards, saying,
Our coaches handled it really well. First of all, I'll just say Adrian is a tremendous kid. And I went over there and said, Adrian, that's not how we practice. And, we talked about how we were going to conduct ourselves. And he just said, hey, I just lost my head. I was tracking the ball. Next thing you know, he was there. And I can't tell you that I haven't been there myself. So we kind of sat him out for a little, let things cool down. And then he went back to practice, talked to Vance and talked to John, and everything was good.
Even though this defense, Dan, is, they preach extreme violence. They want you to play with all gas and no brakes, is the defensive coordinator Robert Saleh's motto. And, the rest of the defense, for the rest of the day, they actually did that. I mean, they were flying to the ball, getting to the quarterback. They were getting some interceptions and having some interceptions pop out of their hands, but encouraging signs from the defense aside from a reckless hit.
Yeah, no all-out brawls, but it certainly was a spirited practice. You could tell there was a big jump in intensity today. I was on a different practice field from Cam, but I saw Aldrick Robinson make a catch, come up, spin the ball in celebration, and it was by the Broncos sideline, and they let him have it. They rode him for the rest of the practice, and a lot of trash talk. I was watching Niners offensive line going against the Denver Broncos defensive line in drill, so that meant they've got the Von Millers of the world going at it, and it was a fierce competition. It was not the standard training camp drill.
Yeah, it was definitely, and that's what they want out of these joint practices, because they've gotten tired of practicing against their own teammates, and now they can hit somebody on the other team without fear of really pissing somebody off upstairs. So anyhow, let's get to the number two thing. John Lynch was basically asked what his stance is on the national anthem protests. And obviously that's a big issue around the 49ers because of what Colin Kaepernick sparked last season and had other teammates join him in protest in hopes of more social equality. And John Lynch, you could tell by the words, he's very patriotic.
I've got my own feelings about it. And I think my strongest feeling, we had a great deal the other day where we had 4 chairs up here, and there was Steve Young and Jerry Rice, and they talked about the 49er way. And I always thought it's one of the great things about this league is, in fact, I think it's a great beacon for the rest of culture in terms of the way it should be. You strive for a common goal, and you have unity. And I think this game brings people together. So I think personally, when I see that, I think that's divisive, and I understand guys see things that they're not happy, and they have that right, and I think we'll always respect people's rights. That doesn't mean I believe that. I believe that this game should actually be celebrated for what it is. I think a tremendous unifier for our country and for what the way things should be. Bill Walsh used to speak about it. You take guys from all over the country, different socioeconomic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, and you have friends for life. Warren Sapp's here today working with our defensive line because he's a buddy of mine and always will be. And so those type of stories, I think, get lost in something like this. But they've got their reasons, and we'll always be respectful of those.
He would prefer a unified team front on the matter, but he will respect anybody that has to exercise their rights to protest, which, the big deal is nobody did in their exhibition opener on Friday. Everybody stood for the anthem, that team unified front that he was looking for. And he said, if something comes up where somebody wants to break apart from that he would like to communicate with them to understand where they're coming from. Dan, anything to add on what John went over today?
No, not really. I mean, it's an issue certainly that's not going to go away. Right. Eric Reed had this conversation the other day. He talked about his approach, and I think teams are getting to the point where they don't want this to be a week-to-week distraction, week-to-week conversation. They got other things to talk about, the national anthem, and Inevitable as you head for a home opener that you're going to get the anthem talk again, but I bet that's the last we hear from John Lynch on that issue.
Maybe. It is something that a lot of players are still talking about too among themselves. Let's get to the number 3 thing out here, and that was one of the competitions that have been going on all training camp for 3 weeks now. Is the 49ers have been checking out their 6 tight ends. How many are they going to keep? 3 or 4? Well, Vance McDonald is their most proficient wide receiving tight end, and that hasn't changed. None of the other 5 guys have gone up and really challenged him. He hasn't had the greatest camp either, so that competition's still in flux. But we asked John Lynch about how Vance McDonald has responded to April trade talks. He almost was dealt, but the 49ers didn't find any takers. He has a high salary. But John Lynch likes how he's been playing. He's consistently blocking. And Brian Hoyer, I asked Brian just about, scouting report out of the tight end core, and Vance McDonald was the first name he brought up.
I think, when you look at the receiving guys, you look at, obviously Vance and Blake and Kittle, and I think they're all doing a great job. I think, we ask a lot out of them, because it's hard to say, are they just pass catch? No, those guys have to go in there and run block too, and I think they're all doing a great job. It's obviously a very deep position, and to be honest, I'm happy with all of them where they're at, and however it pans out, I feel confident with the guys that we have.
And there's stuff that the 49ers still have to sort out here, and they have 3 exhibitions to do it, Dan.
Right. We'll be watching. The cool scene I saw today, wasn't part of that Vance McDonald discussion, but I was watching Elvis Dumervil, the former Bronco, was doing an interview with a Denver TV station. Von Miller saw that interview taking place, went over and jumped right in the shot.
I came and I wanted to be a great pass rusher. Dude coming in and saying, you're going to be this, you're going to be great, you're going to be this, you're going to be that every single day. After a while, you start to believe it. It was a guy like this that really took me under his wing and showed me the way. So, a lot of teams don't have leadership like we had back then, and that's where I get it from as well. I've said it time and time again, the great examples that I've had with Doom, Peyton, Brian Dawkins, Tim Tebow, and all these guys. You have to have a standard like that to be able to give it to the new generation, and that's where I learned it all from. Doom, baby!
All right. It was kind of interesting to see. We talk about the spirited and the feistiness, but there was some friendliness too, seeing conversations like that.
That's cool. And Dumervil now is in that mentor role for Solomon Thomas, the 49ers' top draft pick this year. So injury-wise, Reuben Foster had, and it seems like every practice there's almost a scare, but it's not serious. It looked like he tweaked or had a nick in his shoulder, and John Lynch said he's good. DeForest Buckner and Aaron Lynch didn't practice because of ankle issues. So they are putting Donovan Newsome on injured reserve if he clears waivers. He was the one that was taken off by ambulance last week after a scary collision out on the practice field.
One more thing to watch for. If you can see into the shot back here.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow night, we've got our first salute. The Niners have worked really hard to add a ring of honor. I think fans' feedback was this place is too sterile. It's too generic. It needs more of a sense of history. Well, that's part of it. What you see behind us, they've got all the retired numbers, all the Niners Hall of Famers. They've got a salute to the 5 Super Bowl championships. Part of the scene tomorrow night. Or I'm sorry, part of the scene Saturday night.
Saturday night, and they need to add a couple more Super Bowl numbers up there because they've been stuck on those 5 Super Bowl titles for 22 years. They did leave room for about, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 more, and they could expand the stadium, I suppose. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching, and follow us on mercurynews.com and eastbaytimes.com.